Traveling is a big part of our sport, and if the destination that we're traveling to is suitable for rebreather diving, we definitely want to bring our unit with us so we can enjoy all the benefits of rebreather diving. So let me share with you some tips on how to travel with your rebreather. So let's dive into it before I get shipped out with this rebreather. So those tips will apply to you regardless of what your unit and your configuration is. And you will also need to bring other stuff with you, such as clothing, other dive equipment, such as your mask and other things, your camera and your camera setup, and things like that. But we are going to have a look into the rebreathers in specific, what you need to be able to travel with them. So first we're going to have a look at how to transport your unit by car, then what you can do on the boat to make your life easier. And then we're going to have a look at some helpful tips, what you can do to get through the airport smoothly and how to travel by plane. And at the end, we're going to have a look at the list of helpful things to bring with you so you don't get stuck on land not being able to dive. So let's start with some helpful tips for traveling by car. So when traveling to the site to go diving, it is ideal for your unit to be assembled at home according to the assembly checklist and your unit to be ready to be dived. So you should secure the unit from any movement by either laying the unit on its back, or if you prefer transporting the unit while standing upright, it's best to tie the unit to something in your vehicle so the unit does not move around. Even if the unit has a solid and a wide stand, it can still tend to move, fall on the side, or damage your vehicle or damage the unit itself. So it's always a good idea to tie the unit to something to prevent it from any movement when transported upright. Pay extra attention to more sensitive parts of your rebreather, such as loop hoses, your manual addition valves, and other items that could be more sensitive to damage, for example, by other items falling onto them and potentially damaging them. So to prevent all this, the safest thing is actually to transport your rebreather in a solid, hard transport case. And that way you can be definitely sure that nothing happens to your rebreather and it's nice and safe inside. And you can even put things on top of the transport case and that way save more room in your car or have more room available. Keep your cylinders closed for the journey. Sometimes you may travel for several hours to get to your site, and if you had a small leak, you can actually leak a significant amount of your gas out. So if you keep your cylinders closed, you prevent this from happening. Then when you get to the side and you go through your splash checklist, you obviously need to open all your cylinders up, but that's a part of your checklist. So that's also an important thing to do. When you get to the side, even that your unit has already been assembled and checked, go through your pre-dive checklist again. You never know what could have moved or what could have happened during the transport, so it's always the best to double check and do your pre-dive check again to make sure your loop is tight and everything seals properly. When you come out of the water after your dive, then if you used to open your unit up to, for example, dry your head out and get some water out of your water trap, make sure that when you put everything in a car, you're going to have lots of wet stuff. So if your scrubber is open or you're not using the scrubber lid, just be careful to not wet your scrubber unnecessarily or not to get any extra water or wet things onto it. One thing to be mindful of is the heat. It can get quite hot in the vehicles, so just be mindful of keeping the rebreather in there for prolonged amounts of times. It's not very good for it. You got pressure cylinders there, you've got seals, you've got rubbers, rubber elements, so it may not necessarily be the best thing to leave your rebreather in the car for a prolonged time. And the one last tip, your car is not a safe. Just be very careful when leaving any valuables in your vehicle. It's also good to take your phone and your wallet and hide it somewhere in the car. It's actually happened to me that my car got broken into while I was on a dive, and the thieves were in a rush, so they took my pants, but I didn't lose my phone and my wallet. So just bear that in mind, and that could be a last helpful tip for traveling by car. Next, let's have a look at traveling by boat. We're going to be talking about a smaller boats, but the ones that you're going to be diving off, not big liveaboards, because some of those rules may not necessarily apply for those because you're going to be spending numerous days on them. So let's have a look at the smaller ones. So first tip, prep your unit up prior to getting on the boat. It's always easier to work on your rebreather on a solid ground rather than trying to fiddle with your unit and assemble things and fix things on the rocky sea. Next tip, as soon as you get on the boat, the skipper will usually advise you where to sit or where to place your unit and how to tie it to something. It's always good to tie your unit immediately as soon as you put the unit on the boat, because that way you prevent the unit from falling, damaging itself, or potentially hurting somebody else. So tie your unit off as soon as you get on a boat. When it comes to a side mount unit, it's ideal not to stand your side mount unit up, not even trying to stand it between other cylinders. Once the boat starts rocking, everything can tend to start moving and potentially start clinging and hitting your side mount unit. Also, there could be other things that could potentially rupture your soft parts or potentially damage some other bits on your rebreather. So ideally, for the side mount unit, place it flat on the ground and ideally put it underneath the seat or somewhere where it's safe for the unit. Be aware of splashing water. Make sure that your mouthpiece is properly closed so no water can get inside of your loop. What's worse than splashing water? Somebody with seasickness. So be mindful of those as well. And the last tip for traveling by boat, keep your unit away from direct sunlight if possible. And if it's not possible, maybe throw a towel over your unit or some sort of a cover so the unit does not sit on a direct sunlight for prolonged periods of time. Let's move on to the next set of tips. This time, flying with your CCR. I mean, traveling by plane. You know what I mean. Well, this one requires a little bit more preparation. So let's have a look if we can make this one a little bit easier for you. When traveling by plane, you'll be dealing with the airport security. And it is important to understand that their job is to ensure our safety on the flight. And the equipment that we're just about to check seems kind of suspicious to them. No wonder, you're just trying to get on the board of the aircraft this thing with electronics, batteries, bunch of wires, controllers, and bunch of other things. Because of this, we need to be patient, we need to treat them with respect, and we need to provide them with as much information as we can so they can understand to what they are looking at. When it comes to your check-in luggage, you can also put in a formal letter starting with, for example, Dear TSA Agent, where you describe that what they are looking at is actually life support equipment. You can provide your phone number so they can call you in case they had any questions. And you can also put your company logo if you have some, and you can also leave a bunch of zip ties so they can zip the zippers back up when they are done with their check through your equipment. But before we even get to the airport, we first need to determine what we are actually taking with us. And this is based on what location we're going to. Are we traveling to a dive base, or are we going to a liveaboard? Or are we traveling to a jungle where there is not going to be any support whatsoever? Does the base have correct cylinders? Do they fill oxygen? Do they offer sorb? Do they have bailout cylinders? Can they blend the diluent we need? We have to prepare ourselves accordingly. When it comes to sorbent and your cylinders, if there is the option, it's always better to rent those out at your destination. And it usually works out to be cheaper than paying for oversized luggage. And this also makes your life easier when packing and you don't have to lug extra weight around. Just note that you usually have to pre-book those prior to your arrival to the destination. And this applies also to helium. If you intend to dive with helium mixes, you usually have to pre-book this prior to your arrival. If you do need to travel with those, well then let's have a look at what can make your life easier. For sorbent, it's definitely easier to buy some at the destination if you can. But if this is impossible and you do need to travel with it, then print out a a data safety sheet about that particular type of sorbent and the brand that you got your sorbent from, and attach it to the keg with the sorb, and also attach a sticker that can help saying safe for airline travel. So this can make your traveling with sorb easier. For cylinders, plenty of places offer cylinders for rental. It's always easier to rent those, so you don't have to carry all this weight around. But again, if this is impossible, then let's go and have a look at the helpful tips that may help you to transport your cylinders. So tip number 1 for traveling with your cylinders is to remove your valve. After removing your valve, you can cover the top of your cylinder with a clear tape, so it can be seen inside that there is nothing in there. And obviously, because our valve is off, there's no pressure in the cylinder, so this one is safe to put in your luggage. What is also beneficial is to put note on the tank. So the note can say the tank is empty, the tank has no pressure in it, and it's safe for airline transport. You can also put the cylinders into a plastic bag, so if it's not really necessary, the personnel at the airport don't have to take the cylinders out of the bags. So that keeps the cylinders a little bit more protected. Also, if the cylinders have any oxygen markings on them, just take a gaffer tape and cover up the oxygen marker. This doesn't disturb the TAS personnel at the airport. So now let's have a look at how we can deal with all the weight. So if you did manage to get rid of your sorb and your cylinders and you don't have to travel with those, great. That's a great weight saving for you. Now, when it comes to the actual unit, if you do have the option of selecting a particular configuration, like for example, you're diving few configurations or you're not that fussed about what configuration you're taking, obviously it's easier to take the lighter one. In case of Liberty, you can either take the side mount, which is also fairly friendly for traveling, or you can go with the Liberty Light configuration. So with this, we're looking at 10 kilos. So that's quite travel friendly, leaving you with plenty of spare room in your luggage. And you can fill those up with other things. This is of course, if you have the option. So with Liberty Light, you can get a nice fit like that. Obviously, weight your luggage prior to getting to the airport. So that way you know exactly how much it weighs and you can avoid any extra charges for oversized luggage. I use a little digital scale. I usually take this scale with me to my destination because also on the way back, sometimes I get extra souvenirs that may make me think about my weight again. Or also sometimes you don't have the opportunity to fully dry your gear as well. So you also want to know what your gear is going to weigh on your journey back. If you do have the option and somebody on the other end that can receive a parcel from you, you can actually send the whole gear prior to you getting to the destination. So you can take the time with properly wrapping everything up and then nicely and safely send everything off and just collect it when you get to your destination. That will make your traveling quite easy, but it's not always the option. So then how do you pack the rebreather? So tip number 1 when packing, you want the most sensitive and the most expensive part of your rebreather with you on board of the aircraft. So the head is best to be taken with you. So this you can check in, but this is always traveling with me. We even have a special case for the head. So you can place the whole head, including your head cover, your cave shield, and also your handsets. You can place it straight into your head case, and it will keep your head nicely protected. You can, when you zip it up, you can carry it over your shoulder, and you can also have your other carry-on luggage that you can take on board with you. The case also has a zipper pocket in the lid that you can use to store some documentation in it or anything that you like, or you can also put your Liberty passport in there. The Liberty passport is made to fit inside of your travel passport, so you can actually have it inside of it and it doesn't stick out. You can have it handy to when you get to the gate, so you can provide the security personnel with all the details about the rebreather. The passport contains information about what the rebreather is, what the rebreather head is, what they're just looking at, with the exact description of individual parts, also the information about the battery, its capacity, and also the information that the device is safe to fly. At the end, you've got also your information here about yourself and some emergency contacts if you need to fill this out. So just also in case if this got lost, the person that finds this can contact you and return the head safely back to you. Obviously, all the sensitive parts should be detached and ideally wrapped up in your clothing or into something that will keep them nice and protected from being moved around or from being potentially hit by other things. You can also take those into the cabin with you, but this obviously depends on the weight allowance of your cabin luggage. If you do need to pack those sensitive bits into your check-in luggage, just make sure there are no sharp things around or no heavy things around that can hit those items or potentially rupture the counterlungs. So just make sure those are nice and safely stored inside. This also applies to surroundings of the whole unit, so nothing can get through from the outside, potential hits or somebody throwing your bag or things like that. So you can obviously use a standard bag, that's completely fine. If you're going somewhere where it's really rugged or you can afford to take a little bit of a harder luggage with you, definitely full-on hard case is much better and much safer option. But this is, of course, only when the weight allowance allows you to do so. Now let's move on to some helpful tips. Having a dive insurance is highly recommended when traveling and in general as well. But you can also consider getting travel insurance for your equipment when traveling. It's always good for peace of mind, just in case anything happens. Take the picture of the items in your luggage, just in case you later need to track what you actually had in the items in case something got lost or anything like that. If you can, get to your destination a couple of days prior, so you can actually allow yourself a few days just in case your bag doesn't make it on your flight, so it has enough time to make it on the next one and arrive to your destination on time. Get your rebreather serviced before your dive and get a technician to go over your unit and make sure that everything is serviced and works the way it's supposed to. But also dive it a few times after the service just to make sure that everything really works the way it's supposed to and you have a sound unit ready for your dive. Bring some spare parts for your rebreather, particularly for the crucial components. This will obviously vary based on what type of rebreather you have. With Liberty, you have all the systems doubled, so obviously you don't have to think about it as much, but at the same time you also still need to bring some spare parts. Ideal is to prepare yourself ahead. Create a travel checklist with all the items that you do not want to forget to bring with you for your trip. So now, let's go and have a look at the list of spare parts that we recommend taking with yourself. First of all, bring spare O-rings. You may need those. With O-rings, you may also need some O2 grease, spare mouthpiece, also a handy thing. With spare mouthpiece, also you can bring a bunch of zip ties. Those are always good for any repairs or anything like that. Speaking of repairs, you can also bring some duct tape. You don't have to bring this much. It's kind of heavy, so you can roll some part of it off, but this is also handy. For us European divers, a part of a CE requirement is to have M26 connection on your oxygen cylinder. So converter from M26 to DIN is also helpful because not very many places have M26 valves on the oxygen cylinders, and you may actually end up getting stuck. And then you can either have a converter, which makes your life heaps easier, or then you would have to go alternatively exchange and try to get a valve with M26 thread or to change your O2 spindle. But this will solve all your issues. So that's also a handy one to have. Don't forget your chargers, very important. Or if your unit uses standard batteries, bring a charger for your batteries and a whole bunch of batteries if your unit uses them, or just bring some spare ones. Oxygen calibration kit, don't forget that. Next thing, oxygen sensor. Bring one or a couple, depending obviously on where you're traveling. If you're traveling to a CCR friendly place, there's a chance they're going to have some there, but I would not rely on it. If you do have the opportunity to bring one of these with you, it's safer thing to do so. Bring some bolt snaps. Always handy thing to have. Other few little things that are good to bring with you is mushroom valve, your ADV membrane, your overpressure valve membrane. Depending obviously what type of membranes you've got on your unit, those are also good to be brought with you. Also, patches for counterlungs, just in case that for any reason you would manage to rupture one of your counterlungs. Those patches are also very good to bring with yourself. So with these out of the way, you can see that all those items don't actually weigh that much. So that's not much of an issue to bring these with you. Your unit's manual, also a handy thing. But these days you don't have to have it in a paper form. You can have it in your phone. So just download the manual into your phone, have it in your phone just in case you need to go back into it to find some information. Also, when it comes to your checklist, your splash checklist, pre-dive checklist, your assembly checklist. The assembly checklist with Liberty, you can use Divesoft app. You've got all your checklists. This one works also offline. So as long as you've got your phone, you can have your assembly checklist with you. When it comes to pre-dive checklist, Liberty units have it integrated in them. So the pre-dive checklist is there. So you just follow the checklist in the unit. If you have other unit and the unit does not have it included in it, then yeah, it's also a good thing to bring those with you. Don't forget to bring your bailout regulator. It's also your backup lifeline. So it's good to have your own and your proven and serviced regulator. And when it comes to spare parts, obviously this is also dependent on what type of unit you're using. So bring all the spare parts that your particular unit model may need. You should also consider bringing some disinfectant, for example, stearamine, for you to be able to disinfect your loop and your counterlungs, particularly if you travel into hot climates. A good thing is also to bring some ear beer and some seasickness tablets, just in case you get seasick. I heard that it's happened to some people before. Being able to dive your own rebreather in remote destinations is truly amazing. And if you are a Trimix diver, with ever-rising prices of helium, your unit will actually pay off for itself after a few trips. So what we have discussed now was mainly about the rebreather itself and how to travel with it. There's obviously going to be a lot more parts and items that you're going to be bringing with yourself to be able to go diving with everything. But this would fill in another video, so we may have a look into this next time. We have prepared a checklist that you can get by clicking on the link in the description of this video. Also, you can follow the TSA website to keep yourself updated on the newest rules just before your travel. For other help for checklists and documents, you can also visit a webpage of the Dirty Dozen Expeditions, and we will also be leaving some links in the description of our video. I hope that this video was a helpful source of information for you and that will make your traveling with your rebreather a breeze. If you do have any additional questions, please email us at info@divesoft.com, or you can visit our webpage at divesoft.com. Don't forget to follow our social networks. And if you have your own tips for traveling with your rebreather, please leave them down in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you in our next video.